Not in this case. Who's firing those rockets? Bands of renegades. Those who follow Tsiolkovsky, composed of miners and their descendants. Surely not Elias people. I know that name. Ross snapped his fingers. Victor Tsiolkovsky was a Galactic Command Polonus scientist. He worked with ship's artificial intelligence. I met him once at a lecture before the war. Years ago. What's he doing here? He and Sol were the ones. They brought the domain here to Scaeva Tengal. The blue-green ocean was visible beyond the seawall, and dusted snow-capped mountains were silhouetted against an orange glow, and shadows blanketed the bay. He figured he was near the hotel craft and the landing strip, but he was worried about Lindy. As with his family, he had to face the possibility that Lindy was dead. Did I, John Ross, my father, pass through here? No one answered, and Ross's face tightened like dried leather. How do I speak to this Sol? Devon shook his head. I don't believe it'll be possible for you, my friend. Bombs this afternoon. Maybe the Zulauf found the site. Zulauf, the soldiers? Correct. If I could run to the Heartland and fight with Tsiolkovsky, I would. Try and attack Sol with the renegades, but there's no stopping the Revac. The reunion book, Galactic Command, begins when Ross, after the parceling of the sector by the Cyvac people, and the meeting on Axiom Baroma with all the command admirals, and Axiom Baroma being made the fleet capital, Ross begins an opening log. He's headed for downtime to meet his family on the Earthstar vessel. Kuczynski and Gil Webb, along with his crew on ESS-14, are going to the Capellan outer planets for consultation and a re-engineering of Planet 11's Sector 5 irrigation system. He cringes at the thought of meeting his father, John Boyce Ross Sr., an Intelligentsia operative who never made many appearances at home when Ross was growing up. Melissa Schaefer, his aide, sees him off on the voyage. She liked being one up on him and makes sure everything is packed for his voyage in an SAV with Lindy to the Earthstar ship. Ross is frightened of meeting his father, John Boyce Ross Sr., on the Earthstar resort ship. His hands were actually shaking as he thought about meeting his father again. The ship's doctor, Mike Pfeiffer, says that he needs to be checked out before he leaves, but Ross pushes his way out. Pfeiffer tells him to forget about the Capellan planets and get the hell out of here. Ross leaves with his second-in-command, Hugh Lindsay, and tells Lindy that he's been ordered to relax. As they're ready to leave in the SAV, his Sky Pilot commander, Jim Morris, tells him to get closer to his father, which causes Ross to cringe. Ross makes the remark that his father is a self-contained puppet of the intelligence community. Why was the old man even going to Earthstar? The Earthstar ship has a concourse hotel of 3,000 rooms. Just being in the proximity of his father is still making him nervous. His father always had a cover, and Ross suspects that this trip to the Earthstar ship is one of those covers. Ross's family will be there, his close sister, Deborah Ross Gagnon, his brother Cappy, who always had it out with the old man and now worked near the waste sector, and Wayne, a professor at the Cambion University on Regular 7. Ross is convinced that the old man will split before their time is up on the Earthstar vessel. The Earthstar vessel has 3,000 tourists per week via various ports around the sector. There's a flowery hint in the air as they move past all the haulers and their gears at the Earthstar ship port. Mr. Antone meets them and tells them that their suites are ready. The family ship has yet to arrive. His father's craft, according to Antone, will arrive in 6 hours. An automatic cart with Ross and Lindy moves along an open wall with palm trees and a large spread of water. There's lush courtyards and hummingbirds flying through the air. In 3 hours, his family will be on Earthstar. He and Lindy imbibe a potent drink called Poing Elixir. Anton then calls him and said there's complications with his arrival. The family ship has accelerated into deep space. There's been attempts to contact Cappy. Cappy does not respond to the signals sent to his ship. The ship had veered away from the Earthstar vessel at the final approach. Lindy then begins scanning the heavens to see what's happening with the ship. He tells Ross it's moving away at a speed inconsistent with the craft. Ross talks about the base at Conchu on Sigma Antares, but it doesn't appear to be heading in that direction. He wants to know what's causing this. He thinks that his father had deliberately involved the family in whatever was happening for Intelligentsia. They now send out a Priority 1 distress signal to command. He wants to get his father's vessel on the viewer, and then he asked Antone to get him a ship, and he keeps mumbling about his father, saying, "That bastard, that bastard." Antone lends him his own ship, a sleek dark vessel called the Hotel Ship. He argues with a man named Dunstable, who brings him out into deep space. It's a long craft, 32 times faster than a flight vessel. Dunstable is not happy with the fact that they are commandeering the ship and tries to stop them. Ross takes him for a little ride and deposits him in a deep space buoy, leaving Dunstable behind. He talks with Lindy about the charted planet in space and the 352 planets they used to have. Cappy's Perryfield Trail leads to the Scaeva Tengal system that once housed mining colonies. It's now settled by the Elias Sect. According to the Alton Accord, there's no religion on the planet except the Elias Sect. The mainland is the main continent, a southern continent. There are no exports and it's totally isolated. No signs of progress are seen here, according to Lindy. In recent years, there have been attacks along the shipping lanes. Ross is awakened by a message from Scaeva Tengal. An electronically altered voice mentions that he's part of the Sol domain. All navigation is then jammed and a tug beam emanating from Scaeva Tengal takes over the hotel ship. Ross orders Lindy to shut down the Perryfields to shake the beam, but they're still caught in the drag. Ross sends out a message to release the beam at once. A man named Sol is on the speaker again. He says that the vessel, the hotel vessel, is an enemy target. Ross wants to know what is this Sol domain. He asks Lindy for a visual of Scaeva Tengal. It's a blue-green planet with blurred oceans. They've been out for 3 days now, chasing the Caliboria Trail. He definitely thinks the old man is involved. He sends another message to command. The view of the planet sharpens with aqua oceans and brown-shaded continents. As they get closer to the planet, a tapering isthmus is in a large channel with mountains caked in snow in the background. There's a megacrete landing strip swept with snow in the middle of the city. The city looks like relics. Baby drac beams are taking over the ship. Lower levels of the sky as they move into the atmosphere are tinted aqua. The smokestack trails reveal a different era in planetary involvement. There's an explosive battle going on as they land. Ross visually tracks a smoke trail over a rolling landscape. Why is this place at war? As they move closer to the planet, baby drac beams move the craft lower into the atmosphere, and the sky becomes tinted aqua. It's a midpoint civilization, according to Lindy. The actual landing strip is a runway, cratered and rough as they land. Helmeted troops in green uniforms with rifles quickly encircle the hotel craft. They are banging at the portal. Ross moves outside and is hit by soldiers before he passes out. They are placed inside a prison. The guards are called Zoloff. The prisoners mention that he is about to be revaced, which means he will lose his identity forever. This was an Elias Sect planet until Sol arrived. He feels like he's experiencing his last few hours of human emotion before he's put into this revac chamber that all the prisoners are talking about. Sol has changed the ideals of the people. Bands of renegades still exist, firing rockets into the main city. The resistance leader is Victor Tsiolkovsky. He exists with the renegades beyond the dust-covered snow mountains. Ross cannot find Lindy. One of the Zoloffs moves up to Ross. He quickly realizes that they're Cyvacular beings. They don't feel. He also learns that it was part of the Pegasus-Merisheli Project from years ago. The Elias Sect was at peace on this planet. Tsiolkovsky and Sol arrived from outer space. Tsiolkovsky promised better ways to grow food and produce goods within factories. But now Sol controls the air and he controls the entire planet. For some reason, Sol has advances like the tug drag beam like he shouldn't have. Ross senses another presence on the planet. 3 green uniformed Zoloff, their eyes glowing, move through clusters of resistance. Some have retreated to the Heartland. Lindy is led by 2 Zoloffs. He has a vacant stare and his human attributes have been revaced. Ross is loaded into a truck where he is smacked around, and he wants to know, where is Sol? That Polonus experiment on Pegasus-Merisheli has caused a half-human madman to escape. The city is laden with bombed-out buildings and barbed wire gates. They are brought to an old building, a manufacturing plant that no longer works. As men are brought into the Rafac chamber, a bright orange light appears and sizzling electric sparks fly out. They emerge from the booth with a dumbfounded expression. Powering all of this is Caleb's Aurea, which the Antarians had during the war. Ross uses his defensive skill to hit some of the Zulofs, but he's caught as Sol arrives with the dome. And then Sol surprisingly says that he wants Ross to work with him. Ross is enraged by Sol, who wears a sun insignia on his uniform and helmet. The right side of his head has exposed flesh and a transparent opening with pinpoint lights darting around in brain matter. His right eye is laced with pinpoints. He smokes a wrapped piece of tobacco. Ross then learns that his family may have been transformed. Again, Sol in his garbled English says, "Help us, you will." But Ross wants to know what the hell he's done to the planet. He says he'll get vessels from Command. He admires the ESS commanders. Ross then begins questioning whether Rafac, the Antarian, have somehow got to this planet. Sol will not answer his questions and just says, "I am what I am." Cappy steps into the room in handcuffs. Deborah is sobbing. His gray-haired mother looks pathetic, and Ross, unable to contain his emotion, knocks down 2 Zulofs. He is hit hard and cuffed, and the old man walks into the room. His whole family is brought behind a door. There's a pistol put to Ross's head. Father unemotionally gazes out the window. Cappy thinks that the Antarians were involved. The old man didn't even flinch and says in a very matter-of-fact voice that we have several options here, Johnny. He hugs his father's solid body, but the old man doesn't respond, and Ross laughs and says, "Never be weak." The old man then details the Pegasus-Merisheli Project. Tsiolkovsky panicked when Sol was to be eliminated. Sol's real name was Philip O'Hara, and he had killed 14 people on Merisheli and then escaped 12 years ago. The old man tells Ross, "Let's try and keep our heads." Ross wonders about ESS 27 and blames the entire incident on Intelligentsia. Below in the street, Zulofs abound in their uniforms. He tells his father that Lindy has been revaced, but the old man is more concerned about the base at Khonshu. Should Sol get into space? He mentions to Ross that Tsiolkovsky is definitely on the planet and fighting against Sol. The old man stares out the window as an explosion rocks outside. Sol then appears and says, "With us you will come." More bombs shake the ground as the truck brings him away. Tsiolkovsky is the key, according to the old man. Sol announces to Ross that he wants him to send a message to Command. Ross just shakes his head, thinking of Intelligentsia, and said this never should have happened. As an explosion blows across the road, the truck overturns. Ross and his father kill the guards, and they end up in the road as the truck pulls away with the family in it. The old man tells Ross that there's no way they're going to be able to get the family. But Ross is adamant and wants to leave, saying that he has no choice. The old man just simply states reality is reality, now or hours from now. They slide into a half-collapsed building with smoke and sand. The old man assesses Sol's weakness. He only thinks in one dimension. We have to go back toward him. Our mission is to get to a transmitter and send a distress message out to Command. He or Rafac may take Khonshu, which will lead on to an attack on Axion Varoma. Getting to the airfield is paramount, but even more paramount is escaping from the Zulof, and they prepare for a long, cold journey. Ross hacks open old food cans. They're in a stone foundation with moon-like craters across the floor. The old man suddenly tells Ross, "You were a hero in the war." Ross, still angry and upset, said, "Don't patronize me, Colonel." The old man then rattles off Ross's citation. Ross just shakes his head, but the colonel says, "In my line of work, you need to conceal your emotions." Ross makes mention how the Colonel never acknowledged Ross's contribution to Galactic Command. And the old man says, in my line of work, you need to conceal your emotions. Outside, the moon paints the rolling hills, but the old man is convinced that more than Sol is involved in these battles. He tells Ross they need to move out while they have the night. As gas truck engines pass outside and planes and parachutes inundate the sky, Ross stares at the Revac plant in the distance. The old man says that Sol thinks that he can ring them in, and the Zoloft are still after them, shouting Revac and implement. They encounter the Zoloft, both men attack, and end up getting their Zoloft clothes and helmets. And Ross says to the old man, don't you ever express emotion? And the old man says, is this how you run your ship? Ross tells him, why don't you just go to hell? The Colonel is right about going into the hinterland, and that irks Ross. Sol is in a jeep riding around the main city. He thinks that he can lure an ESS ship to Scaeva Tengal. He puffs on his cigar and randomly kills one of his top officers, Ramos. For some reason, they have command Drac beamers. Ross says that Sol does not deserve life. They hike into the rolling hills and the valley at the river's edge. They steal a raft and push it down the river. The old man says they have to assemble a team with personnel and confront Rafac. They must transmit a message before Sol gets to the base at Conchu, and Ross just keeps mumbling that son of a bitch Bragg. They spot a red and white antenna on a distant ridge. Hunger has made Ross fatigued, but anger pushes him up the ridge ahead of the old man. Inside they find antiquated technology, but the old man is smart enough to start the generator. A weak signal can be sent out from this antenna. He cuts the heat to the complex to save petrol. He finds a tape recorder and cuts the magnetic strip, putting it as a repeat message on the machine.
This is Aristophanes, 24 Humana 2154 Galactic Time. To all Galactic Command ships, Scaeva Tengal has been taken over by a half Cyvac, Sol, a.k.a. Philip O'Hara, escaped from the Pegasus-Merisheli Project, with Dr. Victor Tsiolkovsky. Tsiolkovsky is incognito, but the planet population is mostly revacked into Cyvac beings. The planet has the ability to tug drag. Sol is working with the Antarian Rafec and Commander Jack Bragg. They all have intentions to revac and conquer the Galactic Command territory. Aristophanes out.
And he signs it Aristophanes, which is a code name for Admiral Bender, the longest sitting admiral in command. Ross is shocked when his father says, I am Admiral Bender. Ross says, you're incredible. He says, I have to be. Troops are now moving up the hill as the old man smashes the rear windows. They both dive outside. The troops later topple the antenna, but the message has gone out twice. There's an explosion in the woods, and they head down into the hinterland. On Capella 14, Kaczynski is sick of the heat and the Capellian sunlight. A portion of the irrigation network has been set up. Polonus argues with Muldoon and suggests that he be left on the planet. Muldoon tells Kaczynski to get back up to the ship. Rip is calling with a message. It's Lindy's initial message from the hotel ship. It's a Priority 1 distress signal. Cappy Ross's ship must be rescued from Scaeva Tengal. Kaczynski tells them to pack up their gear, and they meet Muldoon on the Locust. He's heading to Scaeva Tengal. Muldoon tells him that he'll be court-martialed. He thinks that more than just Lindy and John are in trouble. Kaczynski has Intelligentsia connections and puts out a contingency alert. On the ground, early morning, cold and hungry, the old man quotes a poem by Edward Talbot. Talbot never came to Scaeva Tengal. They meet a blue-eyed, blonde Elias, a stranger, Arkud, fleeing with Sol with his group. Sol has no reason, he says, to go this far inward. They move into a structure with fire and food. The initial miners on this planet, according to Arkud, have been revacked. The Elias cult always faced Arcturus, the Red Star. They are looking and waiting for the Ben Orvis. The last sighting was seen years ago. Millions are at risk if Sol expands his domain. Akov will send emissaries out to find Tsiolkovsky. As Ross complains about the old man again, the old man tells him that every person has his own agenda, and you're putting your own standards on me. Ross tells him, I needed you. Ross talks with Akov about the Elias Sect and confesses that he's a centrist, a philosophy he learned on Mark 4 in his first assignment. All beliefs radiate to the higher consciousness. According to the Elias Sect and Akov, we are within what we know, what we see. There is an upper extension where Elias dwells. Akov says, I am only a conduit. The Antarian Rafec shows up with Sol. 3 Drac weapons are strapped over his chest. There's a dozen Antarians in back of him. In a red day suit with a sash at the waist, Jack Bragg moves down the ramp with a goblet and a couple of women by his side. Sol says that signals must be sent out. Rafac knows that Ross sent out a message to Galactic Command, but he tells them, let them send their ships. Soon they will have 2 ESS vessels under their control. Humans will be revaced as revenge for the war. Sol has one-dimensional thoughts, according to Rafac, and calls him his Cyvac friend. He doesn't care about Ross, only his ship. Kaczynski has moved out of the Capellan system. Rafac says he will live by the Avorkton code. Kaczynski is on the way to planet Scaeva Tengal, looking for John and Lindy and following their trail. Why Scaeva Tengal, he asks. Muldoon ends up arguing again with Colonus. Sol hovers near a portable revacing machine. He selects men to revac. Ross is irrelevant, he said. Sigma Antares and Khonshu are the course to follow. They sweep through the Heartland to try and kill Ross. An Antarian pilots an SAV over the Heartland. Bragg does not like the Cyvac. He would use the Aria to purchase land and position once all the revacing had taken place. Jack Bragg will accumulate power. Sol wants to fire a Drac beamer and Bragg calls him a dummy. Jack Bragg wants Ross's ship and have his crew taking orders from Jack Bragg. Ross hears a boom across the valley and spots the ESS-27 SAV. Blue Drac energy cuts across the river. The embankment is blown up and the river diverted. The old man thinks that Sol and the Antarians are guessing what to attack. A man with wavy gray hair arrives in a jeep. It's Victor Tsiolkovsky. His nickname is Cobb and he knows the old man. The old man says how they decoded a transmission about Philip O'Hara. O'Hara kidnapped Cobb years ago, and now Sol is in possession of a revacing machine that will go over a 5-mile radius, possibly more. It's stored under the revac facility. Tsiolkovsky says the Antarian presence only adds to the problem. Back on ESS-14, Rip stares at the tug drag beams that have surrounded the ship from Scaeva Tengal. Colonus tells him that navigation is not responding, and warning beacons are sent out by Kaczynski. He even sends out a message. There is a faint signal from the planet. They are trapped. He readies the sky pilot ships and has troops ready to land on the planet, but beams from the planet encircle ESS-14. They can't break the beam, and Kaczynski wants to know who the hell is behind the beam. Colonus says unknown. Now they have a view of Scaeva Tengal, the hazy green-blue planet. In a mountain cave, Ross, now dressed in resistance fatigues, listens to Victor Tsiolkovsky through the communications around the planet. Tsiolkovsky's leg, long ago injured in an explosion, is still bothering him, and he uses a cane to move around. There must be a way, Ross says, to reverse the revac. People will die in the experiments, according to Tsiolkovsky. Crutch's message comes through the communications area, and Ross says, what are they doing out there? Kaczynski receives a message from the Cyvac Sol on the viewer. He's wearing a green cap stitched with a yellow sun. Kaczynski says he won't cooperate, and he says who the hell is this clown? Colonus tells him that 12 years ago, Tsiolkovsky and Sol disappeared. Sol is not totally a Cyvac. He's Philip O'Hara, a volunteer lacking conscience and good judgment. Jim Morris readies the sky pilot ship once the tug drag is broken. The city below has been gridded and targeted. Crutch completely wants to annihilate that son of a bitch. He talks about the Aria and Jack Bragg. He asks Sol directly where are Ross and Lindy. Lindy appears in the background. He's holding a lead projectile rifle. His face is flaccid and he's been revaced. There's no sign of any other ESS vessel in the Scaeva Tengal system. In the hinterland, the sky has a luminous pink glow. The old man sits on a log with a Polona screen on his knees. The stars are heightening above. Ross knows that Kaczynski left Capella without orders. O'Hara and company have to clear a path to Sigma Antares, says the old man, and the Aria is the key to stopping the beams. Ross thinks maybe they can divert it to another object. They have to get to the harbor, the source of the beams. Ross wants to divert the beam onto another object. They have to get to the harbor. He's afraid that his whole crew now will be revaced. Crutch's log. He talks of 19 tug drags around the vessel. The vessel is in stable orbit over the northern continent shore. The nature of the power source is unknown, but he knows about ESS 27, Rafec, and Bragg. Muldoon wants an engagement strategy, but Crutch says he won't surrender the vessel. He wants to face Sol now. Sol is in a jeep at the revac plants. All the Zulofs raise their clenched fists as he passes. He says the vessel is approaching. Honor will be served, says Rafac. Rafac calls Bragg. He's within 600 kilometers of ESS 14. He will transport all personnel down to the planet's surface for immediate revac. It's the beginning, the Antarian says, of an empire. Kaczynski now has Drax fully charged. The Sky Pilot ships are in front of the bay doors. He reduces all light on the vessel. But Bragg is getting belligerent on the channel. ESS 27 SAV requests docking. He tells Bragg to get the SAV away. Finally, as a trick, he agrees to Bragg's terms. He'll let Bragg stroll into the outer bays and then fire upon him. He says, "Checkmate, Jack. What are your terms?" Portable chambers, according to Jack Bragg. Muldoon is trying to break away from Scaeva Tengal. They're going to have to attack ESS 27. At that time, Crutch prepares a dearth, which will surround the planet and completely eliminate all life. He begins dearthing the planet. He'll be put on report, according to Muldoon, and he says, "Then put me on report," and he relieves Muldoon of his position. Dearth is at 100% and begins encircling the planet. Revac now threatens Galactic Command. Displacement dearth waves boom above in the sky. All the perifields are down. ESS 27 slams the locust with a Drac barrage. All the perifields are down. Ross's log indicates that he's in the snow-covered hills of Scaeva Tengal. The old man is talking with the Elias Sect as they plan to return to Sol City. After a short battle between ESS 14 and 27, Sol announced that he is abandoning the planet, and now the base at Khonshu is in trouble. Truck convoys are patrolling the streets, and propeller-driven aircraft zoom through the sky. Resistance has been quelled. The Elias Sect members still mention the Bane Orbius and how the Bane Orbius will lead them to perfection and preparation after death. The old man now changes his philosophy and accepts the possibility of upper levels of being as the dearth of the planet Scaeva Tengal continues. As they approach Sol City, Ross wants to find the hotel vessel. They move into an alley. Everything would be gone if the dearth is completed. There's gunfire across Sol City. He moves along a fence lined with scrub brush. Ross finds the long black hotel craft silhouetted in the shadows. He's brought back to the revac plant where he finds the old man under guard. The dearth field had diminished strangely 28 minutes ago. The old man says he's proud of Ross's career. He wants Ross to go to the hotel vessel. The Zuloff move up the ramp. Rafac, in full dress uniform, has a holstered shooter. Sol fires the shooter rifle into the ceiling as he approaches. Rip and his members of the crew have been revaced. "You will watch while the others are revaced," says Rafac. Rafac approaches the old man and slices his neck with an Antarian knife. Ross kicks the Antarian and punctures his eyes. Ross rounds the ramp corner and leaps down under the swiftly moving clouds as lead bullets ping the dirt and asphalt. He slides down a sloping conduit along the fence as the rifle bullet spray continues. At night, he wanders the streets. He knows that the old man is dead. He's in the second story of a building. He meets an Elias Sect man in a white worship robe, a blonde-haired, blue-eyed man, who says he must face the truth. An SAV is being ready for flight. The old man spoke of possibilities we can't see, but Rafac can take Sigma Antares and the basic Khonshu. The Elias Sect man tells him not to take retribution, but Ross wants to find the Antarian and stop him dead. Later, he meets up with Tsiolkovsky and fans a rifle around the hangar. The control module from the hotel craft has been ripped from its casing. Ross shakes his head and looks at the dreary isolation outside. Even the coils have been bent and dented. Tsiolkovsky stares at the panel and the resistance fighters. There's no Caleb Zorier and no spacecrafts in the immediate area. On ESS 19, Commander Chris Keller gives his report. He's now on a search and recovery mission of ESS 14 and 27 to Sigma Antares. Keller's second in command, Jose Pascal, tells him to destroy the two command vessels heading for Sigma Antares. Sol wants to revac and implement the entire planet. The pilot bays are open and Sol comes marching in. Sol takes over the ship and prepares to revac Keller and his crew. Tsiolkovsky, back on the planet, says Ross risks danger trying to bring the hotel ship into orbit the way it is. Ross will be also visible in space. Arkov thinks Ross will make it. He thinks Ross has spoken to the Orvis band. The craft is launched into space with Tsiolkovsky and Arkov watching on the hill. Ross heads towards Sigma Antares. Rafac now wears an eye patch due to his fight with Ross. He sees the hotel ship and tells Keller that he will destroy the ship. The ship explodes. Lindy reads a manufactured statement to command to lure more ships out. He lies about oil and maintenance injuries. ESS 9 and 7 are approaching. Says that Ross is missing with his father on Scaeva Tengal. Ross had left the hotel vessel before the explosion. He has 14 hours of air left as he drifts toward ESS 14 and enters his code into a control panel. Soon he's in a propulsion tube. He blames Bragg for what has happened more than he blames the Antarian. He hears his people inside the ship. There's a connector hatch to the maintenance hub. Then he has Polonus override all ESS panels and Locust panel functions. He listens to the Locust conversation. Rafac wants to revac Axiom Baroma. Lindy points a Drac beam at Ross as he appears on the Locust. Ross's leg thrust knocks away the Drac beamer. Sol says, "Kill you I will, Ross." Ross kicks and opens Sol's sizzle flesh, and he's dead on the floor. There's a revac dome at the end of the conveyor tube and a propulsion ladder. Polonus closes all underpinning cabinets by order of the commander of this vessel, John B. Ross. "I see you, Ross," says Rafac. He welcomes the challenge and orders everyone into the sky pilot bays so he can fight Ross alone. Ross realizes it's possible to remove a perifield on deck 45B and break a hole in the hull if Rafac is up there, but he has 4 minutes until that is accomplished. Polonus begins the countdown. Rafac has a Drac beamer. He stalls Rafac, but the Drac beam hits him in the leg, causing bleeding. He takes short breaths and is dizzy. Rafac dodges Ross's Drac beams on deck B. There's an insufficient Drac charge, and Rafac says, "I see human blood on the landing." The perifields have been disabled now on deck B. Since he doesn't have Drac power, he bangs the transparency. There are no weapons. The transparency weakness is hit, causing an opening into space. Rafac is taken end over end toward the span hole and is yelling, "Save me, Ross! Save me, Ross!" Ross kicks his hand and says, "This is for Admiral Bender." He kicks him and Rafac is sucked into the void of space. Ross's final log. Tsiolkovsky has discovered how to reverse the revacking. A human will enter the chamber and the revacking will take place again, but at a lower fine-tuned level. Ross looks down over the river region and thinks about the old man seated next to him on the riverbank and how he had never been closer to